You're probably going to hate this video, but I guarantee if you stay until the end, you're going to be a significantly better writer. You'll understand how to craft sentences and paragraphs that keep the reader engaged in turning the pages. You see, normally there's only two ways for me to do this training. I can teach you the theory and the tips and show you a few examples, or I can take something that I've written and try to walk you through how and why I did what I did in the writing, but both of those have some pretty significant drawbacks to them. So on a recent live training with some of our members, I decided to do some improv writing. I went into it not knowing what I was going to write, and I had the students on the call pick the setting, the protagonist, and the inciting incident, and then I wrote the thing live on the call so you could watch how I was deciding every single word that hit the page. I wanted to do this so that you could watch me actually work this out live, which is why I think you may hate this video. It's not very tightly edited. There's a lot of ums, there's a lot of likes, there's a lot of me stumbling through things, but I think it's going to be extremely helpful to watch how somebody might craft a scene that actually works and how I make all of those little micro decisions about which words are on the page and why, and you can see the final result, which has some really strong narrative drive for the beginning of a scene. So watch to the end and you're going to learn how to write very compelling prose that keeps the readers glued to the page. Now, who am I? My name is Tim Grahl. I'm the CEO of StoryGrid, and I'm the author of 6 books, the most recent being The Shithead, which has been lauded by New York Times and Wall Street Journal best-selling authors. My partner, Sean Coyne, is the creator and founder of StoryGrid, and he has over 30 years of experience as a writer, editor, and story researcher, and everything that I teach on this channel, in this video, and everything at StoryGrid is based on his extensive experience and research. Now, before we jump in, I want you to do me just one favor as you go through this training. Just leave me a comment with one thing that you learned, one thing that was helpful. This really helps me as I create future videos for this channel. Okay, so let's dive in and get started. When Sean did the line edits on my book, The Shithead, the number one thing he did was make everything more specific. So we've said for years and years, it's probably one of the first things Sean said to me when we were talking about StoryGrid, is specificity leads to universality. So the more specific you make something, the more universal it becomes. The way I think of it is the more it rings true with the reader. And so we do this through valence language. And so this is when on the short story. So I released the No Doubt short story a couple weeks ago. I'm working on my next one now. And this is like the thing I'm thinking a lot about as I'm getting into this. And so I want to go over a definition and kind of how I think about it. And then we're going to do kind of a live exercise that could be a complete disaster, but we'll see how this goes. So, here we go. All right. So these are the rules I think about when I think about valence language. So we want to choose words with specific emotional charges to influence the reader's experience. And that last part is what I get pushed back on the most. And it's really hard for me to express how important it is that you have an opinion with your writing. And this goes all the way down to the theme, right? So why are you telling this story? What are you trying to get across to the reader? And that has to come all the way down to the word choices you make in every single sentence. And this took me a really long time to wrap my head around because, Sean would tell me things like every word of every sentence has to be on theme. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so this is what we're talking about is you want to choose words with specific emotional charges. And the goal is to influence the reader's experience. And every word needs to carry an opinion, and you're pushing the reader towards a particular emotional response. So the other thing that valence language touches on, or is very involved in really, is showing versus telling. So this is where you don't want to tell the reader what your protagonist is feeling. You don't need to tell your reader what they should feel because of what's going on. You just describe things in a way where it evokes the emotion in the reader that you're trying to evoke. And the number one thing to avoid is neutrality in your language. You can be negative, you can be positive, but you can't be neutral. If you're neutral, the reader doesn't know what to think. So I was thinking about this a couple days ago, where it's like the reader is relying on the writer to tell them what they need to know. And one of the things you're assuming when you're reading something is that everything the reader is or the writer is telling you is relevant. Like they're telling you because you need to know so that you understand what's happening in the story and what happens next. And so they're relying on you to indicate that to them. So if you give them neutral language, they don't know how to feel. And it's very uncomfortable because it's like, well, you're the one telling the story. You're supposed to tell me how I'm supposed to feel. But of course, you can't do it directly. You have to infer it through valence language. So, um, so this is one of the exercises. Some of you may see me do this before. I just want to touch on a couple things, and then we'll get into the exercise. So this is where it's like your job is not to tell the reader what happened. Your job is to tell them what happened in a way so they understand how they're supposed to feel about it. Okay. And here's the thing, we do this all the time. This is how we live our life. So let me just give an example. So let's say I'm driving home from work and a person cuts me off in traffic. Okay. So that objectively happened. Anybody that was watching it would agree that I was driving and somebody cut me off in traffic. So I get home and I want to tell my wife about what happened, but I want to tell her in a way so that she understands what I'm trying to say and I'm evoke a response in her, an emotion in her. So I could do it lots of different ways, but here's two. I could say, some asshole cut me off in traffic. Or I could say, this poor old lady cut me off in traffic. Now, I'm saying the exact same thing objectively. A person cut me off in traffic. However, it's going to evoke different emotions, right? The first one is going to be like, she's going to be like, oh, fuck, I hate those people. And the second is going to be like, oh my gosh, is she okay? Right? So it's like you're just by switching out the noun and then the second one adding a couple adjectives, I like evoke two completely different emotions in the reader. Um, but if I just say a person cut me off in traffic, you're sitting there like, okay, am I mad? Am I should I be scared? Like, how am I supposed to feel? And as soon as I start switching out the nouns and adding a couple adjectives, you immediately start understanding what I'm trying to say. Um, so, so this is how I think about when I'm writing, and valencing my language is I start with verbs. So I try to pick verbs that have a lot of information in them and push the reader in the direction I want them to go about how they're supposed to feel. Then I look at my nouns and I try to do the same thing, right? The difference between person and asshole, right? Um, and then only if necessary do I add descriptors, adjectives and adverbs. So you never want to give the reader, this is again, like we could talk about this in so many different contexts about every word you put on the page um, should be there because your reader needs it. So you can't say, you shouldn't say something like, um, oh man, I should have it like actual example. Like a bad example would be like, he slowly crept towards the door because crept already means slowly. So there's no reason to have the word slowly there, right? So you always have to send new information to the reader in as few words as possible is what you're trying to do. Now, this doesn't mean there's times to use a lot of adverbs, right? So I was reviewing a writer's scene, I don't know, a few months ago, and they had like three adjectives strung before a noun, but each one of the adjectives gave me new useful information, so that's allowed. But if you put, he quickly ran, that's a problem because quickly and ran mean the same thing. So you want to make sure, and you always start with pick the best possible verb you can, then the best possible noun, and then only add descriptors if you need them. Okay, so this is where when I um, when I think about when I'm writing, I rarely do it in like a linear way. Like I'm not just like typing sentences out, and then just leaving them the way they are and keep going. I often feel like I'm putting them together like I'm rummaging through a Lego box, pulling out the right words. So this is where I want to have some fun because I was trying to think about when uh, whenever, I play this dual role, right? I'm a writer, but I also try to teach writing. And it's really hard for me to like pay attention to what I'm doing so I can teach it later when I'm actually trying to write. And so I was going to go back through like a scene I've been working on for my short story and kind of walk through what I'm trying to do in each sentence. But I thought, hey, it'd be way more fun to just put myself on the spot and just do it live. Okay. So I'm going to get a setting, a protagonist, an inciting incident from you. And then I'm going to work through like the first paragraph and just see if I can write something that's halfway decent live while talking through how I'm making the decision. So you can see how to do this kind of valence writing. Now, really quick, I'm cutting in here because I cut out this really long period where everybody was voting on what I should write about. So I had everybody just throw ideas in. That created a word cloud. Then everybody voted on their favorite one, and that is what became the setting, the protagonist, and the inciting incident. So I didn't want to force you to watch that, so I cut it out. So let's jump forward to where I actually get into deciding how to write this scene. All right, so this is going to be our setup here. Is we have a subway station, a busker, so I've learned a new word, and his tips. Let's see. I'm gonna ask. We're gonna make it a female busker. We're gonna make it a female busker. Busker playing the violin. Jesus Christ, I can't spell. All right, tips are stolen out of the violin case. Let's go. All right. So I'm gonna make it crowded because I feel like I want to increase the stress. So it's gonna be like 7:45 in the morning or 8:45 in the morning, something like that, right when like everybody's cramming into it. It's a subway station. I'm gonna set it in New York. That's really the only subway station I've ever been in, so that's a little easier. We're gonna put her. Okay, so um, so I could start with saying like uh the crowds pushed through the narrow halls of the subway station. Okay. But that's not a very good sentence. So could maybe say hmm, like uh sweaty bodies crammed their way through the turnstiles, sliding their subway passes. Uh, as they went. And I would say like uh, cram their way through the turnstiles, sliding the subway passes as they push through. uh, way through the turnstiles. That sucks. Rushing to make the trains before they pulled. Uh, rushing over each other as they hurried to their next very important meeting. So they hurried to catch the train, to catch their train to their next very important meeting. All right. So again, like you're getting first draftish, but the idea here is like, I want to portray that it's busy. I want to portray that these people think they're super important. And everybody's in a hurry and it's super busy. So this is where it's like sweaty bodies is better than a crowd or a large group of people or everybody. Crammed is so much better than like hurried or pushed or whatever. And then turnstiles, I took out the part about the sliding the cards because we already know that because of the turnstiles. Um, oh, when the Slido app is active, I can't access the chat. Is that the case? Let me see here. How do I turn this off? Close current app. All right, can everybody get to the chat now? I think you should be able to. All right, let's see. So uh, she sat hunched over the worn strings of her violin, scraping. Oh, what's the thing called? Here you go. I'll just continue to show you what I would do here. What's the thing called that you play a violin with? Is it a bow or a reed or something? I think it's the bow. All right, good. Oh, everybody's like telling me in the chat. Great. She sat hunched over the worn strings of her violin, scraping the bow. See, I should put worn strings here. So she sat hunched over her violin, scraping the bow across her worn strings. Okay. Um, she sat hunched over her violin, scraping the bow across her worn strings. Um, The sweaty bodies crammed their way through the turnstiles, rushing over each other as they hurried to catch the train to their next very important meeting. She sat hunched over her violin, scraping the bow across her worn strings. Um, eyes ever watching the where do I want her looking? I feel like I want her not looking at the people. Um, eyes ever watch, eyes glued. Eyes scanning the shoes as they hurry past. Mm, stopped mid note. to run a ragged sweater sleeve across her nose and reach down for the half-eaten bagel. A pair of all right, so what's an expensive brand of men's business loafers called? All right, pair of Santonis had dropped in her case among the coins and bills. Okay. She sat hunched over her violin, scraping the bow across her worn strings, eyes scanning the shoes as they hurried past. She stopped mid-note to run a ragged sweater sleeve across her nose and reached down for the half-eaten bagel a pair of Santonis had dropped in her case among the coins and bills. Okay, can you picture this, right? So, like, I want you to know she's not looking great, right? She's not proud. Like, some of those when you walk through, I'm just love that I learned this new word. Like the busker, like some of them are like really into it, and then some of them look like the life just had the shit kicked out of them. And then I also want to like make it really clear that like she's surrounded by people that are richer and more important than her. So that's why they're going to their very important meetings. And she's looking at the shoes, and a pair of Santonis had dropped in her case among the coins and bills. You don't even have to know what a Santoni is. The fact that it has a name is all that matters, right? I don't know what a Santoni is. That's just one of the words that ChatGPT gave me. And so, and I wanted to like show that like she's looked down upon. So somebody, some rich dude dropped a half-eaten bagel thinking like he was doing her a favor, or maybe he was even just throwing it away. We don't know, but either way, it's not saying anything good about her or him. So, so now let's get to the inciting incident. Um, okay. Somebody steals her tips. Somebody steals her tips. All right, who should steal her tips? Like I'm trying to think, is it like some asshole kids? Um, is it like another busker? Because we're thinking here, like how much are they going to get? So this is where it's like every word goes towards motivation. So I have to know why the people are stealing the tips. So that questions, there's not going to be that much money in there. We're talking 10 to $30 or in that case probably. Um, So whoever steals them has to be stealing them because they need the money. So that would be another busker maybe, or they're just being a dick. Um, People are assholes. So yeah, so who would be an asshole in this situation? Most of these people are just trying to get to work, get to where they need to go. Because I could write this same scene and make it like everybody's trying to help each other get where they go. Like I've been in the subway and like people are relatively nice. Um, So are they doing it to be mean, or are they doing it because they need the money? Okay, okay, I think I got it here. Um, oh, okay. Fucking dialogue, so fucking hard to write. When you read my final versions of my stuff, I've usually rewritten the dialogue probably 10 times. My dialogue is atrocious at first. Uh, Shiny. It's terrible. It's another word for shiny that would need new. That's what fucking ChatGPT is for, right? I like gleaming. Uh, those are awful. Uh, I'll just go with gleaming for now. A gleaming pair of Jordans appeared into to the white and shot into her case, scooping up all bills. Busker. Hey, the busker. Um, looked up to find flowing blonde hair topping a beautiful face sticking out. A beautiful um, face sticking out. Um, a necktie and sweater vest sporting the emblem of whatever, whatever private school was at the next stop. Friend held the door for the subway, cackling. Ah, the other sweater vest held the door for the subway, cackling as his friend turned. She shot out her bow, catching his back foot, and he stumbled down to his hands. Uh, she leapt up and cracked the bow against the boy's ass, and he howled in pain. Okay, you see where I'm going. All right. So like what what do you know about the woman, the two boys? Yeah, what do you know about them? Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Opposing social groups, troublemakers, poor desperate woman, two rich kids, class struggle, buskers on tough times, preppy boys. the guy's rich and attractive. They're in a good financial position and probably don't need the money. Yeah. Did I put any of that on the page? Like, do you how you know all of that based? I'm just telling you what happened, right? And I could easily say people hurried to the train to get to work on time. She played the violin as people rushed past her, dropping coins and a spare bagel in her violin, and we still don't know anything about her. So, this is where like this is how I think through these things is like, I need you to know she's poor. I need you to know she's in a tough situation. I need you to know where she is in space and time. I need you to know who these kids are. You know everything you need to know about these kids. Yeah, you're all saying it, spoiled, preppy kids, right? Um, so it's like, this is what we meet by every single, so let me just go through this, right? So, okay, let me just pick this sentence. Okay. Oh, shot and okay, so shot is the verb, right? So I tried to like shot so it's fast, right? It starts with because she's looking down, she sees the shoes and then the hands, right? So I'm also you have to think about what's happening in space and time. And so I already put her eyes down on people's shoes. So when she sees him coming, that's what she has to see first. And because her eyes are still down, she will see the hands shoot into the violin case. Um, you know, I picked Jordans because they're the first shoes I could think of that a rich preppy kid would be wearing. There's probably something a little better on a rewrite. Two clean white hands shot into her case. I was gonna say manicured, but like high schoolers don't really manicure, so I was like, we'll go with clean white hands. Scooping up all the bills, right? So I got the word busker from you, which was great. Um, uh, oh, to find slowing blot flowing. That was supposed to be flowing. This is a very clunky sentence. I would definitely rewrite that sentence. Um, Does anybody have any questions about this? We're like 40 minutes in, so I'm not going to do this much longer. I want to leave plenty of time for Q&A. But I wanted you to see what I wanted you to try to experience is like what I'm thinking as I'm writing what happens, right? So I still have to have an inciting incident. I've got the inciting incident figured out. I know who my protagonist is. I got the setting. And now I need to portray as much information to the reader as fast as possible just by describing what I can observe. So remember, when we're talking about showing versus telling, showing is describing the observable. So all I'm doing is so I'm writing this in third person and I'm as if I was standing there watching this happen. Nothing is going on here that I can't see. Um, and so, um, Yeah, okay. At this point, I think I'd struggle trying to come up with valence language during drafting. Do you prefer thinking about this while drafting as opposed to during the editing? So I do it during the drafting. It's slow drafting. It is like, for me, it's slow. I'm getting better, but like I kind of ran that through pretty quick, but like 2 days ago, I worked for almost an hour and I wrote just over 100 words. When you're writing a longer story, I have to keep in mind everything I'm trying to portray in the story in this moment. So it's like I'm trying to get to where I need to be. But yeah, I try to do this in real time. So because what this is doing is it's giving you the theme of the story, right? Like if this was like she was a more well-to-do street performer, or the people around her were being nice, or there was a different inciting incident, this would be a completely different story. But you already are starting to get a sense for what's going to happen in this story because we've got somebody poor getting taken advantage of by a bunch of rich people from leaving the bagel. That's why I put the leaving the bagel thing in there. If you use brand names, you risk the reader not knowing their significance. I've never heard of Santoni's before. Yeah, so what yeah, this is one of the discussion slash arguments I've had with Sean is like what is too specific? Because like yeah, and maybe people don't know what I didn't know what Santoni's are. My short story, No Doubt, I didn't say a backpack, I said a JanSport because I'm placing it in the 90s and everybody had JanSports in the 90s. Um, but like, given the context, you don't actually need to know what Santoni's are. All you need to know is it's a brand name of something, so that matters, right? So we never refer to the brand names of things that aren't important, if that makes sense. So if I'm brand naming anything, it's already important. And fuck that, even if you don't know that's important, somebody dropping a half-eaten bagel is a real asshole move, right? So let's say some readers might miss that that's a rich guy leaving the half bagel. That's okay. It's not that important, but it's specific. And it's like we keep going, the more specific it is, if it just rings more true. If I say the rich guy, I am I am telling the reader that that guy is rich. What I need to do is describe him and let the reader discern that he's rich, right? So I didn't say these were preppy boys. They're wearing a necktie, sweater vest, and Jordans. And then I do make the assumption they're going to whatever fucktard private school, but you know that because there's an emblem, right? So I just say it's sporting the emblem of whatever fucktard private school was at the next stop. So it's like, yeah, I could put in here the a pair of leather Valronis. Valronis. Valronis is made up, and you still get the idea, right? Um, I would probably actually be polished would be a better one because that kind of gets across leather already, and now we know they're really nice. Leather could still be worn down, right? So polished is more specific of an adjective than leather. All right, where in this text are we seeing neutral language? Um, if we do that, you might clean up in a second, third sweep. All right, let me just read through this. I'm assuming because all of you are still here that this is not violently boring. So I'm just going to keep going. Sweaty bodies crammed their way through the turnstiles, rushing over each other as they hurried to catch the train to their next I don't like this rushing over each other as they hurried to catch the train. I would probably try to figure out a way to shorten that down so they um, scurried like ants. Scurried like ants to catch the train because that ants crawl over each other. Um, so that kind of says the same thing, but it builds a picture in your head. So this is how you show using metaphors. So I don't tell you that they're climbing over each other or that they're bustling. I just say they that should be cram their way through the turnstile, scurrying like ants to catch the train to their next very important meeting. And like, I get something out of the dashes because it turns it into one word. Very important, very and important are both kind of shitty adjectives, but one of my favorite things is making up words. So like in my new short story, and I call it a comatic sleep, COMATIC. So it's a coma-like sleep, but I like using comatic. I haven't decided if this is a good thing that I do this. I did it in my No Doubt short story too. But this is like very important meeting, right? I almost put hashtag very important meeting, but I don't think we're to the point as a culture that we can use hashtags in the middle of sentences. So I just went with dashes. So I kind of like it. I can cut sat because hunched is a verb. She hunched over her violin. scraping the bow across her worn strings. I'll probably do the worn strings because it already put her right there. Eye scanning the shoes as they hurried past. I might put hustled past. Hurried is just kind of blah. Um, she stopped mid note. That's a dash. Uh, okay, I'll probably put paused. That fits mid note a little better. So she didn't just stop. She hit pause to run a ragged sweater sleeve across her nose. I might put a ragged red to run a ragged. I don't love run, but I love the alliteration of run a ragged, so I'll probably leave it. Run a ragged sweater sleeve across her dripping nose. Because that says something worse, I think. And reach down for the half-eaten bagel. So even like the fact that she's reaching down for the bagel, she didn't, she's probably going to eat it. Reached down for the half-eaten bagel. A pair of polished Valronis had dropped in her case among the coins and bills. So now here's the thing. You don't know how many coins and bills there are. So I could say sparse coins and bills. I could say growing pile of coins and bills. So like, is she getting more money? I think sparse is more like on theme because she's kind of doesn't have anything. Go do it. It's like a gleaming pair of Jordans appeared in two clean white hands. I'll probably put then because and signifies that they're happening at the same time. And so I want the shoes to appear and then the hands to shoot into the case, scooping up all the bills. Busker looked up to find flowing blonde hair topping a beautiful young face sticking out from a necktie and sweater vest, sporting the emblem of whatever fucktard private school was at the next stop. It's a little long. The other sweater vests held the door for the subway. So again, it's like, it's not the other boy, it's the other sweater vest. So this is where it's like, we do this, right? So we're judging, like people always talk about stereotyping. Stereotyping is the only way you get through life. You have to look at people and start making assumptions. The sin comes when you hold on to your stereotype too tightly, right? But we all stereotype constantly based on our experience of our life. So by calling him a sweater vest instead of a boy, I'm cast typing him so the reader understands that's who he is. He is not a boy. He is a sweater vest. And he's not just a sweater vest. He's a sweater vest with an emblem of a fucktard private school. So it's like, this is where I'm choosing better nouns and descriptors. So sweater vest is almost like a noun by together. Held the door for the subway, cackling as his friend. I don't like turned. Spun back to the train, maybe. For the train. For the subway, cackling as his friend spun back to the train. She shot out her bow, catching his back foot, and he stumbled down to his knees. I don't like leapt up. I want to say she shot out, but I already said shot there and up here somewhere. Leapt up's okay, and cracked the bow against the boy's ass, and he howled in pain. Yeah, lunged. Yeah, she lunged forward. I guess she lunged and cracked. Yeah, she lunged and cracked the bow against the boy's ass, and he howled in pain. So I kind of want to watch her like beat the shit out of this kid, take her money back, and just kind of leave him limping onto the train. Is kind of what I think would happen next. It might break the bow. I like her using the bow instead of her foot. I don't think her foot would get there quick enough, and you can reach farther with the bow. Yeah, maybe she wouldn't be able to trip him. I don't know. I like it. uh, any other questions about this? Yeah, so this is close third person, right? So I'm giving you everything from her perspective, but it's still third person. This is what I'm historically bad at third person. I feel much more comfortable writing first, so I've been kind of forcing myself to write in third. And one of my favorite authors that does this is Leanne Moriarty. She's so good at it. And so I read one of her books like a month ago or something to kind of get me back into that space. Yeah, shows one needs to research as you write, not to make petty mistakes. I try to do just in time research because, research is like a wonderful tool of resistance, right? To get you to not do anything. So I wait until I need to know something and then I go find just enough information to drop it in. So if any of you watched the videos Sean and I did at the beginning of this year on YouTube where I was writing the coffee house scene, I spent about 20, 30 minutes between looking up how a particular espresso machine might work in a coffee house because that was going to be an integral part of the scene. So I asked ChatGPT for some examples of high-end espresso machines that might be in a coffee shop. I picked one. I went and looked up I Googled for the PDF of the user manual for that, skimmed through the user manual to see how to use it, loaded the user manual into ChatGPT, asked it a few questions about how espresso is made in what order with these machines. Now I have my information. I can go write my scene. It seems to me that to start writing with valence language, you'd have to make a bunch more decisions than than simply setting protagonist and inciting incident. As you wrote, you decide the busker was poor. Yes. That there was a thematic binary aspect of poor versus rich. Yes. That the narrator has a bias against the rich. Yes. It's more like the narrator is taking the side of the busker in this particular scene. So yes, but I wouldn't assume that the narrator's just telling you what the busker is experiencing. Yeah, so when you're thinking, this is why we focus on scene writing because you can just make, when you're practicing scenes, you can just make these decisions on the fly and it doesn't affect much. You just have to be coherent within the scene. This is why before I write a short story or God forbid a novel, I spend a lot of time figuring out everything, the whole world, the setting, the motivations, the theme, who the characters are, why they're in there, the double factor problem, the genre. Like we spend weeks figuring all of that stuff out so that when I get to a particular scene, I already know all of that stuff. Like I know it well enough that I can get super specific in the scene. So a lot of times I have just a vague understanding of in the No Doubt short story I wrote a couple weeks ago, I'm like, he's going to get to the church, he's going to wait for the girl, and then the kids are going to show up and they're going to attack him. That is all I knew going into that scene. And then I just started like getting really specific in my head, right? So that's when I went back earlier and had Alex buy the eggs, right? So I didn't write that in the first draft. I added it so I could set up the fact that he had the eggs later. So it was like, I just have when I'm sitting down to write a scene in a longer work, I have a general idea of where I need to go in the scene. I got to get from point A to point B. Here's the people in it. Here's the setting. I already know the theme, so let's roll. And so, but within this is why I like practicing scenes because you can just make it up on the fly and there's not a lot of pressure to make it coherent when we're just working on scene work. So yeah, you could take that same exact setup of a subway station, a female busker playing the violin, and tips are stolen out of the violin case, and do completely different thing, right? Like so, somebody put like the cops stole the money. Okay, well that we're going in a completely different direction with the scene now. If she starts beating the cops with her violin bow, we're gonna have a different sort of problem, right? So it's like but yeah, I just on the fly, I was like, all right, I'm gonna make her like super down and out. And so I need to like if somebody's that's why I was kind of talking through like why would somebody steal money from this lady? They either need $10 so bad they're going to steal it from somebody who obviously needs it. So it needs to be somebody on her same level or even worse, or they need to be doing it because they're trying to either get back at this woman or in this case just like be funny, as high school kids do. So it's like those kind of like I have to figure out why everybody's doing what they're doing. All right, I hope you enjoyed that training. It was really fun for me. I think the people there live got a lot out of it, which is why I'm sharing it with you here on YouTube. Now, if you want to take this stuff further, you should absolutely join us for the Story Grid Scene Writing Workshop. This is where we teach stuff like line by line writing, all the way up to how to craft a great scene. On top of that, and that's what gives our scene writing workshop so much power, is that you get one-on-one feedback on everything that you write. So you turn in a scene and we let you know what you did right, what you did wrong, and then we give you homework for the following week. We've had huge success with these things. You should absolutely check them out. You can go to storygrid.com/workshop or scan that QR code on your screen to check it out and see more. If you want to take this idea of valence writing even further, there's a video on your screen right now that takes you deeper into the ideas behind what makes valence writing so important and how you can apply it to your own writing. So check that out. But either way, thanks for being a writer. Thanks for being a part of our community here at StoryGrid, and I'll see you next time.